This conference will now be recorded.
All right. We ready to go?
Yes.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'll try to speak loud for all of you who are on the Zoom. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see we're starting to get back to somewhat of a normal life here. Half of us here in person, and then the other half on the screen. Hopefully, we'll continue the transition of getting us all back here in the space. So we'll start out by doing roll call. Roll call. Sorry.
Jeff Joyner.
Here.
David Rowley.
Here.
Jeff Lord.
Here.
Craig Delphin. Absent. Tom Armeo.
Here.
Patricia Kennedy.
Here.
Cheryl Robinson.
Here.
Andrew Marietta.
Here.
Here.
All right. Thank you very much. We have a quorum, so we'll continue. We'll go right into the approval of the minutes from May 27th. Any corrections, changes, additions? If not, can we get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Dave.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor of approval of the minutes, either say aye or wave your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we'll go down, report of the Audit and Finance Committee.
Well, they have the minutes. I was not present at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting, but those minutes will stand as a report.
All right, any questions, comments regarding the report? If not, can we get a motion to approve?
Make the motion.
Thank you, Dave. I'll give you a second.
Tom.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor of approving the report of the Audit and Finance Committee?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Bills and communications. Megan?
So there's only 4. They're normal operating expenses, spectrum bills for Cade and for SCO now. The only one that is out of the ordinary is the Gregory plumbing expense. That was for the 139 Commerce Road. There was a smell. They fixed it, so we paid for that work. And then on the deposit side, we do have 2 pilot application fees from Advanced Biotech and Springbrook, and then rent and workers' comp overpayment from AMSA for $50. That's it.
All right. Any questions, comments regarding the bills and communications? If not, we can get a motion to approve the bills.
So moved.
Thank you, Dave.
Second, Jeff.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. We'll now have the report of the Projects Committee. Cheryl, good morning.
Good morning. I will also let the meeting minutes stand for the report if there's any questions.
Any questions, comments? If not, can we get a motion to approve the report of the Projects Committee?
So moved.
Thank you, Dave. You get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor of approving the report of the Projects Committee, say aye.
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 All right, thank you very much. We'll now move into new and unfinished business. Jody, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, we did receive an application from Springbrook for their proposed housing project at the Ford Complex. We've reviewed that, made some, referred back to their consultants, some questions on it, some additional information. We're also still waiting for more of a discussion on their request for a deviation, primarily their financial projections to confirm what they indicated to the board. But with that, I expect to have those before we have the public hearing. So we would like to set a public hearing at this, or get a resolution approved authorizing the setting of a public hearing for Springbrook. Joe, I don't know if you have any comments you want to make on it.
I think the only thing I'll add is that I've had extensive discussions with Springbrook's counsel on the project with respect to Patricia's involvement on, in her role with Springbrook, and that on a going forward basis, we'll make these disclosures at this meeting here. And they're going to provide us with certain background information with respect to addressing those issues, and then we'll be able to make sure that we adhere to all the provisions of applicable law with respect to addressing conflicts and appearances with respect to the IDA's consideration of the project. So we have looked at that very carefully, and we've had very cooperative, collaborative discussions with Springbrook's counsel, and we have a plan for moving forward with respect to the matter.
So moving forward, I will recuse myself from any discussions as I did our last projects committee. So if that's on the agenda, I'll come off and then look for a sign when I can come back on to join the meeting.
So we're gonna take up the resolution now. We need to have a vote. So Patricia, if you wanna jump off for 5 minutes or so and then jump back on, that'd be great. Thank you.
Trying to leave the meeting. It's not letting me leave the meeting.
For power.
There she goes. All right, the rest of the committee, we have a resolution before us. Comments, questions, concerns? And this is to authorize a resolution for us to hold a public hearing. So if there is none, can I get a motion to approve? So, or we gotta go to a vote. We got a full vote on this on section 4. The question of the adoption of the foregoing resolution was duly put to a vote on a roll call. Megan, will you do the roll call, please?
Jeff Joyner,
Yay?
Dave Rowley,
Yay.
Jeff Lord,
Yay.
Craig Galveston is absent, Tom Armail,
Yay.
Josh Edmonds,
Yay.
Patricia Kennedy is recusing herself, Andrew Marietta,
Yes.
Carol Robinson.
Okay.
All right, the resolution is approved. All right, Jody? Thank you.
We have been, as I indicated at our projects committee meeting, we have been working with this group, Advanced Biotech, that is in the process of purchasing the former medical coach facility, and I think it's actually in the town of Milford. They have submitted a formal request for a pilot and sales tax exemption. They have about a $5 million project. They also did fill out or sign a short environmental assessment form, a part 1, since the town of Milford right now, I don't believe is going to be doing any type of environmental review on it. It's pretty much an acquisition and internal restoration. So, but we're required to do a secret review. So as part of that, I prepared the short environmental assessment part, and I probably should go through that. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? I checked no. Will the proposed action result in change in use or intensity of the land? Again, I put no. Will the proposed action interfere with the character or quality of the existing community? No, it's an existing building. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause an establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic affecting the existing infrastructure for mass transit, bikeways, or walkways? No. I think right now it's employees. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy? And it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy options? The answer to that, again, is no. Will the proposed action impact existing public or private water supplies? No. Public-private wastewater? No. proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, or aesthetic sources? No. Will the proposed action result in the adverse change in natural resources, i.e. wetlands, water bodies, et cetera? No. Will the proposed action result in an increased potential erosion, flooding, or drainage, and create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No. And part 3, the determination of significance. I indicated that the project consists of the acquisition of an existing manufacturing complex consisting of 87,000 square feet across 5 buildings and is situated on 80.21 acres. No enlargement of the building is contemplated. The buildings will be internally renovated and include new sprinkler systems and a fire suppression system. No change in land use will occur, and traffic to and from the building will be less than the previous owner. So with that, I did check the box based on the information analysis above and any supporting documentation that the proposed action will not result in any significant environmental impacts. If this board concludes with that, I need a vote on that.
Yep, just a quick question. Acquisition, all the work is being done inside the building. Is there a, just for my education, is there a big fixture and equipment component to this?
The fixtures and component is mainly forklifts, fire suppression system, and a new sprinkler system.
I was just trying to get to the 5 million in my head. I apologize if you guys have reviewed this.
I'm interested in that. I'm going to ask the same question. Also, Megan, while he's looking that up, with the minutes reflect that Patricia has joined us back now.
Okay, their proposed budget includes, there is some site preparation, utility and infrastructure development. Mainly, one of the things they want to do is pave an access road, where right now I believe it's a dirt road that goes into the thing, and pave a parking lot.
I think it might have been paved at one point, but it was deteriorated.
Exactly. They have about $200,000 in electrical systems, $1.25 million in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and $700,000 in plumbing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do they have natural gas?
I'm sorry?
They have natural gas at that site?
No, I don't believe so. They also include about $400,000 in what they're considering warehouse equipment and $25,000 in packaging equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I didn't realize it was that big item.
Any additional questions from the committee? If not, let's put this to resolution to a vote for adoption. Megan, will you do the roll call?
Jeff Joyner,
Yay.
Dave Rowley,
Yay.
Jeff Lord,
Yes.
Craig Gelsman is absent, Tom Romeo,
Yes.
Josh Edmonds,
Yes.
Patricia Kennedy,
You can raise your hand, yes.
okay, Andrew Marietta,
Yes.
Carol Robinson.
Yes.
All right. Resolution passes. Well, that was for the environmental. We now have our public hearing resolution, for Centrome's doing business as Advanced Biotech, project. This will allow us to proceed to go ahead and make a decision on the actual pilot and sales tax exemption, similar to what we just did with Springbrook.
Okay. Any questions? If not, Megan, will you do the roll call vote for this resolution?
Jeff Joyner,
Yay.
Rowley,
Yay.
Jeff Lord, Craig Gelsman is absent, Tom Romeo,
Yes.
Josh Edmonds,
Yes.
Patricia Kennedy, Andrew Marietta,
Yes.
Carol Robinson.
Yes.
The resolution passes. Now move on to the next resolution, Jody.
They plan on voting in July, before our next board meeting. So as you recall, what we did with Corning we issued a temporary sales tax. This, as long as it's under $100,000, we can approve, benefits to a company. This would allow them to gain their mortgage recording tax savings on the property, which isn't a lot of money, but it's still some money to them. So next resolution is approving the 2021 mortgage approval resolution. And Joe, if you'd like to make some comments on that, I appreciate it.
Sure, Jody. And as Jody indicated, what this resolution is our attempt to accommodate the company's schedule with the closing on the real estate. Typically, we don't enter into any IDA documents until after a public hearing. A public hearing is required before granting more than $100,000 of benefits. Since the amount of the mortgage recording tax exemption is less than $100,000, we can grant them the mortgage recording tax exemption without holding the public hearing. And so, again, as an accommodation for their closing schedule, we have this resolution for your consideration, which approves only the exemption of the mortgage recording tax, and the pilot agreement and the sales tax will be considered by you following the holding of a public hearing. And obviously, I'm available for any comments or questions.
And it looks based on the documentation that it's $95,000 they're looking for from the mortgage recording.
Yeah, I think the actual number is considerably less.
It's on page 2.
Yeah, Joe always adds the maximum amount.
Okay.
Right.
I believe it's something like $40,000, $35,000.
No, that's below 100. Below 100, right. Okay.
That's the feature. It's under 100.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any additional questions or concerns by the committee? All right, we will now move this to a resolution to vote. Megan?
Jeff Joyner,
Yay?
David Rowley,
Yay?
Jeff Lord,
Yes.
Craig Elvis is absent, Tom Romeo,
Yes.
Josh Edmonds,
Yes.
Richard Kennedy,
Yes,
Andrew Marietta,
Yes.
Joe Robinson.
Yes.
Sorry, Chair, may I ask an administrative question?
Yes.
I'm trying to keep notes on these resolutions and who moved and who seconded, and I'm not sure if we've actually done a motion and a. Sorry,
We
we
didn't
did?
for any of them. We didn't for any of them.
Okay, then what I would suggest for purposes of our minutes is that we agree that, you know, one person moved and one person seconded. That way we have a clear record in our resolutions.
I'll move all resolutions that we did this morning. And who will second? Tom?
Tom.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that clarification. All right, Jody.
This has been a record year for pilot applications. We had a meeting, was it last week, with Nextam?
Yeah, Tuesday last week.
They're a Massachusetts company that builds solar arrays. They are working with Hartwick College. In fact, we just got notice from the city of Oneonta that they're going through an environmental review on this. So if anybody wants to see some of their drawings, we got them in yesterday.
They are taking, I think the total acreage that will be used, 23, and I think they're doing solar tracking systems, not like Corning did where they're on a platform. So these will, these panels, probably up to 24 panels per tracker, will track east to west during the day. So they have a much higher efficiency than what Corning did. It's
6 megawatts.
6 megawatts. Megawatt is a good question as to what a residential house, but you know, estimates range from
500 to potentially 1,000 houses per megawatt. So what we're talking about here is, you know, quite a bit of electricity. It's really, as you know, it doesn't produce anything when the sun goes down, but it's like a peaker plant during the day, can produce some pretty significant electricity into the system on a sunny day. But very interesting, and it's a much bigger investment because of the way that they are using tractors as opposed to just a frame.
Yeah, I think their estimate right now is between $6 and $8 million, so we're anticipating that it'll come in probably around $7 million for the investment. Because of that, they would prefer that we not use our standard pilot that we did with such as Corning, which was a $1.2 million project. I have put in everybody's, Megan emailed these out, in addition to the Uniform Texas Ed policy, Otsego County IDA Green Energy Policy, which is one example. This was taken from Montgomery County of how they do their pilots for solar energies. And then I added another one, commercial solar array facility, which actually gives a amount per megawatt, up to 5 million megawatts, $6,000, 5 to 10 million, 70,500, under 25 megawatts, 9,000, and over 25 megawatts to be negotiated. So we'll be discussing these in finance and projects at our next committee meetings. But I just thought because it's coming up that I'd get them to the board today.
And I can send out those drawings to the board members that aren't here right now.
That's the entire discussion right now on the solar array. They hopefully would like to go to construction sometime in September. So they're actually moving quite fast on this.
Is this not, the governor had fast-tracked these projects a year ago?
Yes.
Is this being fast-tracked, or is it done under local oversight, or are we in a hybrid mode now, or what's going on?
I don't think they have to go through as detailed environmental review as the city's performing on it, under the state regulations, but that's the city's call.
Okay.
I don't think it's.
One clarification, which I asked specifically, they are not pouring concrete. They have a system where they actually screw these major steel pilings into the ground, and they then attach a framework and the panels to that, as opposed to pouring yards and yards of concrete to anchor it. It's really, so, it's not what you would call, it's not intensive as far as, excavators.
Right? Let's say that.
Yeah, they probably have done.
I was gonna say, there's gonna be rock up there on the top of that hill.
Imagine they check that out, but it's so.
I'm sure they've done site.
The secret issue is far less because there's gonna be less disturbance and they're not pouring hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards of concrete. They're gonna pour a pad simply for the control panel. That's it. Small pad. So it's pretty interesting. Very innovative.
The other thing was that they did meet with the school district on a pilot. The school district would prefer that the IDA handle all the pilots as well as the county. The county actually was the one who informed AM that they needed to negotiate with the IDA as opposed to anybody. That's why they came to see it.
So Jody, when you said this will be coming to finance and projects, I assume that we'll be doing some comparative analysis of the different fee structures?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
The last thing I have that's not on your agenda, I just thought I'd bring up. I got a call yesterday from New York State Electric and Gas. They read that we have our financing in place for the Richfield Springs project. And they said that before they can extend that gas line, they need the approval of the Public Service Commission now, because there's been a moratorium on any gas development in New York State. Just thought I'd raise that.
Not an increase of natural gas, it's simply an extension of an existing supply.
Yeah,
Where
they
the
have more
supply,
than adequate supply.
where the supply is adequate, they just need Mother May I. And the supply, I don't, I mean,
It seems like it would be a clerical process.
I'm hoping that's.
The reason why the state directed us to go to Richfield was they had a supply of natural gas, so, I mean, that's the reason why so
I forwarded.
I'm sure that there's certain people involved in politics who are from that neck of the county, doing everything they can to help.
So I did let, the person who called me from NICEAG, I sent them copies of the drawings that NICEAG prepared for the extension to this project. That this is the location and the size is the 2-inch diameter line. But I don't think the one division talks to the other.
Yeah. And they probably, I'm sure, have to get approvals from governmental oversight. Hopefully it's just a process.
So that's all I have for today.
All right. Thank you, Jody. Any additional questions or comments for Jody? Okay. We'll now move into the public comment period. We have 2 guests with us here today. So the meeting is now open to the public. Michael and Chad, you have comments?
Well, the only comment I have, we've been working on, we expanded this concept of an accelerator program. It's a concept that we created internally, so we've been investing in other acquisitions or new technology to bring it within custom to expand. The way we've done it is kind of take space within the company. It's like I call it the business on wheels, that you can develop it and move it out to a facility of its own. And it's not the incubator concept that is very prevalent around universities. That's not what we're doing. There's a term that Chad knows is that tier level is 0 to 7. 0 is the university type of research development, which is the early stage. We're looking into the 4, 5, and take it to a 7. So we're looking at more progressive development, which is different than the incubator that is you hear at the university level. So what we are developing is a concept of bring companies, helping them to take them to a level 7 to commercialize. So I would envision that to have members from the community, like community bank be involved, or key bank, or to provide financing, actively participating in that development, not just letting them see them you're on your own. Bring VCs available to help them with development, and also manufacturing. We can, as we bring them in, we can help them with the process of getting to manufacturing, maybe offer them manufacturing space so they can grow, and then hopefully we can move them to a facility of their own within the community. The other piece that we could offer is actively the marketing piece, that many young companies have to market. We had a meeting with the marketing team yesterday with Jody, and it was okay. I think both Chad and I felt that it was more kind of casual. We would like to see more of a direct marketing. So as an example, instead of marketing to a geographic area like New York City that doesn't have industry, just direct it to areas that have that industry, like VCs that have portfolios of private equity and we work with Chad. Or universities that have those startups that will need the next stage of development. So we would like to see some, change in that marketing, because Charlie, what did you think of that?
Yeah, I think that,
It was more generic.
yeah, I think now they're looking to more focus some things. My take on some of this was that, sort of to reiterate what Michael was saying, was sort of help these people with business planning, because most of the time you have a startup, it's a couple of engineers, they have a great idea, they have no idea how to move that to production. So help them build the business development plan and the marketing side of it. Look at, is there really a market for their program? What's the market size? And then help them go from innovation to production. And then technology readiness level, that's a TR level Michael was mentioning. It's really a military term, but it's sort of used in some industries as well. But 0 being, hey, I have this cool idea. 7 being, it's in volume production and it's available to people easily. But looking at more clean type energy startup businesses, there's lots of them out there, and we're situated nicely in the middle between Binghamton and Albany, where you have a lot of innovation. You have Binghamton with a lot of battery technology, new stuff. They put a lot of money, obviously, into their battery and packaging technologies. And you have Albany with nanoscale engineering and all of the power electronics, semiconductor stuff. And we're in the middle, and we sort of, between our companies together, use or make some of those things. So I think it's a good spot, and we're in a good spot here to attract those types of businesses. We have a decent workforce here. We have space available. We also have things that other people don't have, clean water and lots of it. That's a big issue these days. It's only going to get worse and worse, so it's a commodity that we should really market and make sure people know you have. But kind of developing these businesses and getting them from thought to manufacturing and volume and building jobs here is sort of the goal, and at least that's what I've been brought in to help with.
Yeah, the other thing that there's a movement within the government, the federal government, to bring manufacturing back to the United States from China. So it's a big movie. The first time I heard of that was with President Obama. That was the first time I heard it. So I was in Binghamton. That we had a meeting with the Army, and that was the first initiated. And then it was consistently through Trump and now Biden's the same policies to get out of China and bring it here in the United States. So there's additional funding from the government if you can bring technology from overseas to manufacture here. So there's proposals that you can do. We're in the process of doing one right now with some partners from overseas. So there's a big push to bring manufacturing back. It started very slowly, very quietly back when the Obama administration, but of course with Trump it was all over. But it's the same consistent policy to bring it out of China.
It was a very clear problem when we spoke to the Office of Naval Research. We were trying to, actually at the time, I was trying to help get a budget line item in the president's budget, and it was a real problem for semiconductors at the time, and this was 2007. So finally
We've noticed we need that.
Yeah, now you really feel that, but it took all this time before anybody really moved on it. So
The government's handling it.
yeah, and so now they've sort of recognized that you think you need them for your cars, think about how many of the missiles need them.
Everything.
It's a problem.
You mentioned engineers looking. It reminds me of two guys by the name of Gordon Moore and Robert Noyce, who were engineers that were looking for assistance. And Sherman Fairchild funded them, and eventually that led them to be founding Intel, which actually was the birth of Silicon Valley. So if you can believe that a couple engineers looking for financial backing can lead to big things.
It's also been my understanding that IBM sort of started here. we are, full circle, but I think it's a time when you have resources here that other people don't have, in particular space, and you can afford to have a bunch of traffic added to your systems here. I think that people here are hungry for a new technology. Manufacturing supports everything. We've got great medical and all the other stuff, but you've got to have some manufacturing behind that, because at some point the services just
Obviously, moving forward and trying to make it happen, an additional key ingredient for a successful future will be an increased supply of dependable energy. Because all this stuff is great, but we're currently being throttled back on natural gas, and every time you turn around, somebody wants to produce something, it takes energy. And
storage is the real key. You guys mentioned you have a 6 megawatt solar panel going in, but cloud drops down to 1 in about a second.
Right. Yeah, so.
Yeah, there's no storage.
Full base load support.
What we found, David, with the solar panels, the solar panel installers do not like energy storage because they sell less panels. We had meetings with them 3 years ago because the state is pushing energy storage with panels, and they refused it. And they told me flatly they don't like energy storage because they sell less.
I also think the technology for storage is finally sort of catching up with cost and technical ability. Historically, you didn't want to store it in lead, because if you stored it in lead, it generated a ton of gases, and battery life was pretty shallow. You have to change them every year. Lithium has been much better. You can last maybe 7 or 8 years, maybe 10 years. The problem with lithium is fire potentials, and also what do you do with it when you're done with it. So there's been a lot of work in some of the new technologies to create a battery technology that's a bit more sustainable. And there are a few that are sort of coming onto the market now. But in the next 5 or 10 years, I think we'll start seeing those really start to take off. They'll be on the more of the industrial scale, not consumers like cell phone scale. Lithium's going to stay there for quite a while. But the materials to get some of these battery technologies, the lithium, cobalt, it's very few places to get it, and it's not exactly environmentally friendly to get it.
As long as some other country does that, though, we're okay with it. And those people die instead of us. Recent conversation with the head of Delaware County Cooperative Electric. Yeah, they're concerned about, we're all in on electric propulsion vehicle, that's fine. Supplying the energy to do it. He's concerned that if it's a slow charge overnight, he probably can handle it. If they did a fast charge, his system can't handle it, number one. Number two, a normal house transformer on a pole can't handle it. You got to upgrade the transformer. That transformer is less efficient, going to cost people more to do it. So, once again, it's all moving forward, and it's not uncommon moving forward to have stumbles because we got to figure it out. But just to race forward before we have things in place to make sure we don't fall on our face, to be, all you guys are doing, it's all good stuff. Let's keep it going and keep talking. But you can't legislate ingenuity. You can't legislate a lot of other things. So.
Yeah, that's a problem that's been there since 2007. It's been well known, and the grid level has gotten much worse than it was.
They're going to force to burn up the grid, then everyone will say, go.
Yeah, that's where you're at. Again, storage is the key.
But
that's sort of
storage is the key.
We both.
But also propulsion is the key, because you still have to have it. Even if you're storing it, it's not going to last forever. Have sunny
but
in upstate New York,
you can charge it much more efficiently.
Correct. Yes. And December, January, and February ain't much fun anyway.
Correct.
As far as generation. So we need to think of this holistic system. Because to have a sustainable community, it has to have commerce involved. It has to have energy to do that. For people to have jobs.
Yeah, I heard tonight said about this issue of Sioux County. So they said they will respond to me. They're considering if we can put get the state involved because of the limited capacity. So I have requested some advice on this. But
it's exciting what you're doing.
Excuse me?
It's exciting what you guys are doing.
Well,
looking ahead, trying to get,
it's a lot of hard work. Because not everything you do works out. As always,
I know that.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting is that we're still, I don't know about that, we're still waiting for the county energy comprehensive plan.
Oh, that one?
Yeah, it's not, the work is all done and has been done. We have some plan, anyway.
I reached out to the two co-chairs at the county level about that, and they said that, because of COVID-19, they just haven't had a chance to sit down with the consultants and finish the report.
Well, there's been enough fires to put out, that's for sure.
So, Joe, I do have one question for you. I believe Seth at Springbrook at one point in time,
Seth is right there.
had indicated that he wanted to know if, because of, we have to give a 30-day notice for deviation to the taxing jurisdictions, that he wanted to know if we could push our board meeting back from July by 1 week. I'm still looking at today's the 24th. And in order to get the public notice in, we have to give, what, 10 days notice?
I mean, notice for which, Jody, the public hearing or the actual meeting?
Public hearing, not our meeting.
Right, so it's 10 days, right, 10 calendar days for the public hearing and 30 days for the deviation letter, correct?
Right, so can we do the deviation letter before we hold a public hearing?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
So they can run in parallel.
Okay, so I guess one of the questions for the board is, do you want to right now anticipate pushing the board meeting on the 22nd to the board meeting on the 29th?
Makes no difference to me.
We need to do that in
Yeah,
order to meet the guidelines,
I
correct?
would say, let's do that, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to us, that's fine.
Thursday's Thursday.
We'll move the July board meeting then to the 29th.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for doing that. It really helps us out by another 30 days for our timeline and getting all the stars aligned. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem.
So you're in charge of the meeting.
Mike, Chad, you have anything else?
Nope.
No.
Unless you have questions.
Anything else we can do to help you?
Not
Check
yet.
It's something we've been doing internally.
Yeah.
I think we would like with the Jordan, we want to bring it to a community. So, participate, not just sit and watch.
Right.
So, as we bring people that might need help with a loan or
So then,
assistance with the state,
You're
they
looking-
should participate.
You're looking to establish a partnership set.
Yes,
You need a
absolutely.
partner group,
Yes,
that's kind of your vision.
just you be involved, participate, come with it. Be a community project, not like a custom project.
how do you have a vision or an idea of that structure? What's the diversity within it? Or how organized it is or isn't, or what you're.
Well, we wanna do a non-for-profit, like a
Okay.
whatever it's called, a
501c3.
Yeah. So we can attach money to fund the operation of it, because they're gonna need somebody to manage, oversee. We have quotes for some internet plus computer stuff. So we envision to start in this building as a virtual, so we can have an address for some business, but gradually as we hopefully will have some success, because we already have some companies that we control that we will bring here anyway. Because of, we don't give a choice. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Gradually, we like to see if we can raise a fund to build a facility that can actually have some manufacturing or some operations of this company. And then we talked about it before, about doing something that, what you call that area down?
The rail yard?
Yeah, that. That you can raise some money through the non-for-profit, and then you can rent it companies.
I think the biggest thing for any startup, in particular for manufacturing, is overhead cost in the beginning, just to be able to compete globally. And then, but I think another aspect of this is that from a community standpoint, is that we can develop a business plan with somebody, but having other people's input and feedback on that from different perspectives, I think, is very helpful. So being able to have a group of people that you can trust and go to and say, hey, look at this and show me where the hair is on it that we need to trim, because it just doesn't make sense to somebody. From writing several of those major plans, it's always looks great to you until you hand it to somebody else and they see some glaring holes that you missed. So I think there's lots of ways for the community to participate and find ways to make things successful. But at the end of the day, I think Michael and I's goal is really to try to bring 10, 12, 15 type companies that can generate a number of jobs here, and whether it's bringing people from overseas, bringing new technology in, moving other people from a different location to here, and then also behind that is bringing in the banking industries and maybe the venture capital and private equity people that sort of has been my life, getting them involved as well, to help. All that spurs more things, housing and other issues that can maybe address themselves if we get some people here.
But also the schools, because how we is involved. But we want to engage the schools for the marketing piece and to engage some students, because those students can be the future. They might stay here, they might get excited with some new technology that they don't even know we exist.
Right.
Like they don't know what dioxin is, they don't know what custom is. So we want to engage those children, the kids, to get excited, to participate in new technology and how to market it, because we engaged students before, and they really didn't know how to market. They were learning at school how to do Avon products or social media type thing. And when we talked about business to business, they didn't even know what that term was. So we want to engage those, and how we taking the lead to participate. So I have a young company with some of their expertise, the professors, but I think it can create a pipeline of students that want to stay here and be hired to participate. So you can have a pipeline of you.
That this area, and I've been on this for Hobby Horse for 30 years or more, has too much to offer for us to have this level of poverty that we see. And if you look at, we need some adjustment, housing, a little more energy available, but we're 4 hours of Port of in Newark, New York City, 5 hours to Boston, 5 hours to Buffalo. I mean, there's no reason, an abundance of clean, fresh water, there's no reason for us to be throttled down like this so much. Somebody with a vision, and we can get people to work together.
We just say we're poor,
No, I don't say that.
No, I don't say that.
Yeah.
But that's the feeling you get.
It's a good fight because it's uphill. It's all good.
Yeah.
We just got to win when we're done.
I'll tell you, challenges the water. My mother passed away, but she visited me before she died, God bless her. And I drove her around, and she saw the rivers and the lake. I said, my goodness, you are blessed here with abundant water. And she couldn't believe how much water there was. Yeah. Because we come from the island, and it's fairly dry. Yeah. And she couldn't believe how much water we have here. And we just
life is important.
It's a big resource. And
resources.
Put me on your list.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mike or Chad? We have any cause for executive session? Anyone? I have a motion for adjourning the.
Joe has
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Chair. If you want to, and at the risk of lengthening the meeting another 5 minutes, if you want to hear a little bit about the legislative session, with respect to IDAs, the dust is still settling. We're still assessing a few things, and we're going to have a memo out, but I'm happy to talk to you for just a couple of minutes about some piece of legislation that were adopted, if you'd like.
Yeah, I would be interested. Everybody else?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you, Joe.
So I think the story of this legislative session is not what was adopted, but what was not adopted. There was a lot of pieces of legislation that would severely restrict IDAs, that would impose additional regulatory requirements, more policing, frankly, from the Authority Budget Office, more power to the Authority's Budget Office with respect to enforcing actions and imposing penalties on IDAs. Much of that legislation was not adopted, which I found very interesting because, as you know, both the Senate and the Assembly are controlled by the Democrats, and historically, that party has not been pro-IDA. What was adopted was a couple of pieces of legislation that I want to mention to you. One is a piece of legislation that, and again, these still need to be signed by the governor. So if you remember your civics class, passes both houses and needs to be signed by the governor. One piece of legislation that was adopted by both houses prohibits an elected official from serving as a compensated officer or staff person of an IDA. There was a particular situation in the Capital District that got a lot of headlines, a lot of attention, and frankly, I think that legislation is directed toward that situation. Another one that was adopted was the legislation that extended the grant and loan program that was authorized for IDAs at the last legislative session to address the COVID problem. So I think that was a helpful piece of legislation. And the other one that I want to point out is, and this was kind of interesting, it's really not applicable to you. There are a number of counties that have a county IDA and then lower level, if you will, cities or towns or village IDAs. And there's a legislation that was adopted which makes the fees that those IDAs can collect uniform to the county IDA. What the concern there was that there was some forum shopping, if you will, where a project applicant would pick one IDA over another, or frankly, have them negotiate in effect against each other with respect to the payment of their, or the sizing of their administrative fees. The other point that I'll make is a gentle reminder that come January 1 of 2022, the prevailing wage requirements go into effect with respect to IDA projects. So all IDA projects that you'll be seeing in 2022, the project applicant needs to pay prevailing wage with respect to the construction laborers on that project. There were a lot of technical procedural provisions added to that or in that particular piece of legislation, which frankly have not been satisfied. So there's some question whether that is actually going to go into effect, but we're all watching it very carefully, and I'm just gently reminding you of that provision. The last point I'll make, and you can interrupt me at any time if you have any questions, you know, I've been doing this work for a long time, and there's been kind of an ebb and flow with legislation, where the legislation has been very anti-IDA. Other time periods, it's been expansive and expanded the power of IDAs. There was a little bit of a funny provision, funny from my perspective, that was introduced during this legislative session, where at the risk of getting very technical, in New York State, there's central school districts and there's city school districts. City school districts, like central school districts, have a constitutional debt limit, which basically means that they can't issue more bonds than their constitutional debt limit. The mechanism for the computation of that limit for central school districts is very expansive. They have the factor that they apply to their assessed value is very favorable. Plus, and this is very, very significant, any bonds that a central school district issues, the portion of the bond that's granted state aid is not counted against their debt limit. So if a school district issues 10 million of bonds and they're an 80% aid school district, which is not that unusual in rural areas, and frankly, many areas of upstate New York, you only have to count 2 million of that 10 million against your constitutional debt limit. Well, city school districts don't have those favorable formulas. So they historically have been constrained with respect to the issuance of bonds, and they have to go through an extraordinary procedure under the local finance law to get their bonds issued. We represent a number of city school districts, and we have to go through that process. Well, what was funny in this legislative session was that there was a provision added by a legislator in Long Island permitting IDAs to issue bonds for city school districts so that the city school districts didn't have to go through that extraordinary provision. So it was an example of an expansion of the IDA powers for projects, but it was just kind of an end around of a constitutional debt limit limitation. And what it did also, frankly, it showed, I thought it was a cynical piece of legislation because you can solve the constitutional problem, but to solve a constitutional law problem, you have to get the legislation adopted in 2 consecutive sessions of the legislature. And apparently there's been some difficulty in doing that, even though the legislation makes perfect sense. So short summary, I think the big news is what wasn't adopted, which is frankly, from an IDA operation standpoint, good for us. There was, I thought, kind of an interesting, in my view, humorous piece of legislation introduced. And but we'll have something to you in paper in due course as the dust settles. And with that, I'll open it up for any comments or questions.
Joe, on the prevailing wage rates that go into effect January of 2022, this is not just an IDA construction project. You're talking about if Springbrook gets a benefit from the IDA in 2022, that they would have to do prevailing wage rates on their renovations?
If they go through the IDA or the CRC, the rules are applicable to both entities.
Is that a for sure thing, or you said that might not end up happening?
The legislation is adopted. It's in effect, and what I indicated in terms of whether it actually goes into effect is that the legislation is fairly involved, as you can imagine. There's a provision in the legislation where there's a committee formed to review the implementation of the prevailing wage requirement. And there's a suggestion in that, in their powers, that they could modify the implementation of the prevailing wage requirement. For instance, they could say, and it's been a while since I've looked at the legislation, it's currently, in broad terms, effective for all projects. I think it's 5 million or above. Well, they could say, let's change the 5 million to 10 million, and thereby exempt certain projects, more projects. They could say any projects located, checking my geography here for a second, Westchester County and north are exempt. So there, and what has got people talking is that committee has not been appointed and obviously not met. So the buzz is what's going to happen.
Joe, is it tied in? Oh,
Go ahead.
Is it tied into when the projects are adopted by the IDAs? I mean, what is the?
Yeah, very good question, Kurt. Oftentimes more time is spent on the drafting of the legislation with respect to the attention of the grandfather clause and the effective date than the actual substance of the legislation. This legislation goes into effect January 1, 2022, and it's effective on all projects that close after that date. So we have to have an actual closing on a transaction in 2021 in order to avoid the impact of that legislation. So an approval by the IDA is not enough. You actually have to have the document signed and a closing where the IDA takes an interest in the property and the papers are signed and delivered. So we're expecting, a fourth quarter bulge with people thinking, oh my God, assuming that if they have a concern about, the prevailing wage requirement, that they will take action at that point.
Major potential impact.
Which room did you want to make into your bedroom, Johnny?
Well, I'm thinking like, if Corning looked at doing a major new expansion, that's going to have a big impact on it.
Okay, let's go.
So, Joe, the cap right now is 5 million from what could change?
Yeah, it could change. Dave, the requirements, they're very technical. Let me report back to you at the next meeting because it's also tied to the amount of benefits you're granting. So a project that, the general rules, and again, it's been a while since I've looked at it. It's 5 million, but there's also a calculation as to the amount of benefits being granted through pilot abatement, sales tax, and mortgage recording tax.
I have, unfortunately, a lot of experience doing school capital projects, and prevailing wage explains why the community doesn't understand why a simple renovation costs what it does. You know what I mean? It's significant. Thank you, Joe.
Throw that in with the cost of new.
Cheryl, did you have a question?
I would just like take a second and ask Jody. I had a conversation with Jody. There was some confusion about a pilot on the Dean Street Loft project. Can you explain that issue? Confusion on the part of the county also about whether or not we issued a pilot or approved a pilot for that project. We did not, but Jody, could you explain?
Yeah, there seems to be some confusion that the IDA issued a pilot for the D Street parking housing project. We did not. That was done by the city itself. They can, because it includes public housing, do their own pilot. However, they can't grant sales tax exemption and mortgage recording tax exemption, which that developer wasn't interested in. He was just interested in the pilot agreement. That pilot, I believe, goes for 40 years. And I know some of the community members think that we did that. We had nothing to do with that. We haven't been involved in that project at all.
Anybody have any questions about that? It was news to me.
Yeah.
I think it's actually, quite frankly, would be news to most people in the community that they have a 40-year pilot on that project.
So the other thing was the governor's office did issue a press release on the Cooperstown distillery. I'll forward copies to everybody. Their headline was "Increased Production Warehouse Space Enables 8-Year-Old Cooperstown Distillery to Add Jobs, Expand Sales, while Boosting Local Agriculture in Mohawk Valley." Our chairman is quoted in this, and Dave, fortunately, 2 weeks ago went to the grand opening, represented the IDA, and our agency got quite recognized at that, both by the owner, the mayor, and Dave, that we had done a great job on it.
Anything else? Anyone? Got a motion for adjournment of the COIDA board meeting?
So moved. Second.
We are adjourned.
Wait, we have one more meeting.
Yes.
Oh,
We're just adjourned from CODA.
It'll be quick.
We are done, the IDA.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Jen, thanks for watching.
Bye, thanks, guys.
Sure.
I think our next meeting will be quite
Yeah, it'll be
short.
quick.
Thanks, guys. See you there. Thank you. Wonderful.
See you soon, Joe.
Yes. Are we meeting tomorrow?
Bye, Michael.
Are we meeting tomorrow? Take a week off?
I grant.
Okay. Wait a while.
Oh, God.
So I'll call to order the Secret County Capital Resource Corporation Board of Directors meetings. Megan, would you do roll call, please?
Jeff Joyner is absent. Dave Rowley,
Present.
Jeff Lord.
Here.
Craig Elton is absent. Tom Armeo.
Here.
Tricia Kennedy is absent. Cheryl Robinson.
Here.
Andrew Marietta.
Here.
Josh Edmonds.
Here.
We'll forego the chairman's remarks. Pretty short meeting minutes. Any questions about the meeting minutes? In the 30 seconds it took to read them, any questions? Motion to approve the meeting minutes? So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there any new and unfinished business, Joey?
Not for this meeting, but possibly for the next one.
Next time. No need for executive session, I assume. Unless anyone has a question or need. Motion for adjournment.
So moved, Tom.
We are adjourned.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
See you.
Bye, everyone.
Cheryl, next time you're coming to 189.